Hey, today's video is all about the 2020 Ultimate Video Editing Rig. And this is it right here. I've already built it. But at the end of this video, you can see exactly how I did build it. Now let's talk about the CPU I used. I used the i9-9900K, which is king of gaming PCs. But how is it for video editing? Well, for starters, it has 8 cores and 16 threads, which makes for very fast rendering and very fast exports. The CPU also has a base clock of 3.6 GHz and a boost clock of 5 GHz. And I actually have this one right here overclocked to 5 GHz at 1.375 volts. Now some of you may say that's high for an i9, but me personally, with what I figured out, this was the most stable voltage I could get. Premiere Pro is highly CPU intensive, while DaVinci Resolve is highly GPU intensive, which is why we're going to talk about the GPU next. The GPU is an NVIDIA 1080 Ti, and this thing is a workhorse, I'm telling you. It has got 11 gigabytes of DDR5 VRAM, and is 35% faster and more powerful than its baby brother, the 1080. Now, no, it is not a 2080 Ti, which I would have used if I could have afforded it, but I can't. The next thing we're going to talk about is RAM. All video editing programs are RAM hungry, and that's because they cache their timeline to RAM storage. Now, the more RAM you have, the more you'll be able to cache, and the smoother your in-timeline playback will be. So in this PC here, there is 32 gigabytes of G.Skill 3200 megahertz RAM. Now, when it comes to video editing, speed isn't much of a factor as quantity, so you can really skimp on the speed if you're using this only for a video editing rig, but if you're going to use this also as a gaming PC, I highly recommend going at least 3200 megahertz. Now, all of these components are sitting on top of an Asus Maximus 11 Formula Z390 board. I chose this board because it has built-in water blocks for the VRMs. It also has dual gigabit LAN as well as built-in Wi-Fi. This is a beast of a motherboard, and I can't recommend it enough. However, if you're not going to be running a custom loop, I do not recommend that you get the Formula board. Because without running a custom loop, the VRMs will not have a heat cooling solution. And without a heat cooling solution, the water blocks that are on them will actually act as an insulator, holding the heat in. So like I said, if you're not going to be running a custom loop, do not buy the Formula motherboard. Buy the Maximus Hero instead. Okay, but how do I cool it all? Well, I have a custom loop, and my custom loop is actually the reason I came up with the name of this PC, which I call Frankenstein.
Frankenstein, what do you want?
30 packets of ketchup.
This custom loop has parts from Bitspower, Bixby, EK, and Corsair, which is why I call it Frankenstein, because it has a little bit of everything. Now I have a 360mm radiator at the front and a 240mm radiator at the top, and I also have a Corsair pump res combo right here. Next on the list are the hard drives. I recommend getting a 2.5-inch SSD or an M.2 if you can. In this machine, I have both. I have two 250GB M.2s in RAID 0 configuration, and RAID 0 means that you have two 250 gig drives and they're combined virtually to make one 500 gig drive. And this is more efficient because when the processor sends data, it gets split into two different pathways and allows the data to be written more efficiently. In addition to the M.2s and the 2.5-inch SATA, I also have a 3.5-inch hard disk. I use my M.2 drives for gaming. I use the 2.5-inch SSD for my home drive as well as all my application storage. And I use the 3.5-inch hard disk for all my backup storage and my old file storage. It acts as basically an archive. Last on the list is the case. This is the Corsair 680X, and I love this thing. It's probably my favorite case of all time, and I've had quite a few cases. I've had the P3, I've had the H500i, I've had a couple Cooler Master cases, I've had an InWin 303, I've had a few. And by far, this is my favorite case. I love that the front glass panel is removable. I like the big air gap right here for maximum airflow. I love the air gap at the front. It comes with all magnetic dust filters. It's a really classy case, and it also does come ready for vertical GPU mount. And one more thing, the case also comes with 3 of Corsair's LL 120mm fans, which are great fans, and if you love RGB, they are... Whoa. This machine can edit 4K, 6K, 8K, RAW. It can do it all. Anything you can throw at it, it can handle. Now that I'm done talking about the parts list, let's go ahead and get into the build video.